Hello, BookTube. Here, let me film a video and see if I can actually bring myself to release it. Hey, it's a Sndy Rds after a while of filming Sndy Rds and not particularly releasing them. So yes, I have been reading. I've been watching BookTube. Actually, one of the videos I've been watching is actually a good apropos video to talk about right at the beginning. This is chatting about BookTube with Matthew at Mayberry Books over at Ami 649 open parentheses Ami close parentheses channel. Ami, a really interesting booktuber. Actually, both Matthew and Ami are just they're totally next level, really thoughtful fellows that you should, if you're not subscribed to both of them, you should be, and of course you are. And I will leave a link down to their really fascinating hour-long chat where they kind of got into it about BookTube and in a way that you don't often get. You often get kind of the commercial stuff of it. You get the neuroses of it, which, I mean, you know, there's a little bit of neuroses in their chat as well. But there's also just some really thoughtful explorations about what we're all doing, what, you know, whether you're leaving comments and participating in the community that way, not here, or, you know, you're making videos. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I found it a really useful video. I've already listened to Brian at Bookish talk about his thoughts on it and the idea of, you know, perfection is the enemy of the good, of just like making everything perfect so much that you don't actually do anything and actually just put out some good stuff, hopefully good stuff, or get to the, at least, you know, start out crappy and limp your way to mediocre. I'm mediocre. I can do mediocre maybe someday. But the thing that kind of really struck me, probably because of where I am in my whatever experiment I'm doing here of producing videos for the last good while, is just like, well, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What's my goal? And I think it was Matthew said that he referred to it as like, you know, well, do you over focus on like individual videos, or he says he tries to actually kind of, what his perspective is to look at it as a body of work. That it's like, don't get ultra focused on one video and how good it has to be or how well it has to do or how much engagement it gets. But think about it as like, you know, a body of work where, you know, any individual little block is not really the end all or be all. It's something which, may or may not be like, you know, the big shining jewel in your wall of bricks, or it might just be one of those bricks that's going to get you built up in a way that you're going to create something that way by just having a group of videos. And I found that really useful to look at, trying to think about what I'm going to go forward and do on BookTube. Not letting particularly grand plans or anything like that, but just as a good kind of an orientation of like, okay, I've made a lot of videos, you know, on disparate subjects, a lot of reviews, but like, you know, what do I want to do? What does all this mean? Is it just is it just a big pile that I just kind of dump with a wheelbarrow and there's just a big pile? It's like, what's the point of it? And for some reason that phrase, body of work, I can feel that, you know, I haven't come to any grand conclusions or anything, but I feel that there's an orientation there, a way of looking at things that is going to be useful to me. And if any of that rambling there sounded useful or apropos to you, I'd really recommend you go over and listen and watch the video and see what you pulled out of it. Because there's a lot more there as well. Matthew and Ami are just, yeah, they're next level bros, you know, as Steve might say. Steve, who's in the comments going, why didn't you talk more about me? Steve Donahue, yes, the Ubermensch of booktubers. Yeah, at least in my little fuzzy corner of the internet. So yeah, let's just get on to books that I'm reading. Hey, let's start off with books that I finished reading since the last time we talked. I finished Elmer Leonard, The Moonshine War, which is kind of mid-level of the Elmer Leonard that I've read. Actually, I've read a lot of really great Elmer Leonard. This one is probably knocked down for me, not because it doesn't have really horrible, terrible villains and a really kind of like thrusting, super propulsive plot that just goes, and then stops. Hard wall stop. I love that in Elmer Leonard. He does not mess around. The second he is done, and he leaves you gasping. Suddenly you find yourself out in the sidewalk going, well, what the hell happened? And it's like, I actually enjoy that versus, I'm all for a Lord of the Rings 16 endings, but there's something really bracing about that. Nope, we're done. Bang, done. So, but yeah, the hero in this is pretty, I found him pretty forgettable, kind of a bit of a cipher. I could see if it was dramatized that, maybe that would be, an actor could bring a lot there. But for me projecting in, maybe that's a limitation of me as a reader. I didn't get that quite that much. There is a liberal use of the N-word. Not liberal, but the use of the N-word shows up in this book, which I'm sure would put off a lot of people. It's set in the 1930s in Kentucky. There's racist characters and they use racist language. And even if it's entertainment, I think you should really take stuff like that seriously and shouldn't shy away from showing it there. So yeah. But be that as may, that's just that's my public service announcement on that one. I have finished something that I don't think I've even mentioned that I was reading, which is The West Beyond the West, A History of British Columbia by Gene Barman. I actually started this either at the very beginning of this year or earlier, and had been kind of going through doing kind of like a chapter a week or something like that, where I was doing kind of extensive notes. I'm really trying to, I live in British Columbia. I'm trying to kind of educate myself about where I live. You get through school with kind of the bare minimum of high school, and then it just drops out of your head. So it's one of these things of like, I'd like to know more about my country to be able to be more thoughtful and more critical, and have a better understanding than just sort of a sheer kind of surface level. Canada's great, eh? It's like, no, Canada isn't great. There's great things about Canada, but there's also a lot of shitty stuff about Canada. So I looked up for a what was a good, solid kind of classic history of British Columbia. Now this one is like almost, I think it was revised last in like 1995, so it definitely shows its age. It's interesting. I listened to some movie critics over at Linoleum Knife, Alonzo Giraldi and Dave White. And I think Dave White talked about how, people of my era, like kind of growing up the 80s, 90s, white kids were educated that, oh, racism is terrible, but hey, we've solved racism and it's all much better now. And it's like, this was a thing that white liberals will tell themselves, not to bothering to particularly ask any of the people who were being at that point directly impacted by racism, what was actually going on. So, and I'm not saying that Gene Barman is an apologist for it, but I can feel there is a bit of that soft peddling in there. And indeed, I am going to be reading with Sean the Book Maniac, On the Cusp of Contact, by her later. This is a much more recent book, and I think in between the two books, she does actually kind of address that idea that, like, how much leaps and bounds of actually listening to the people affected. On the Cusp of Contact is gender, space, and race in the colonization of British Columbia. And I have to say that, like, this was a really good history of British Columbia. I found the social and cultural chapters a lot more engaging than the kind of the resources and political stuff, which, it was readable, but it's definitely a lot drier, and it wasn't really my focus of interest. I'm glad I read it because it's, resource province like British Columbia, and just the politics, you have to have a basis in that to know. But I'm looking forward to this, which I think is going to probably focus far more on her strengths, and kind of get a little bit less of a history textbook, which I was looking for a history textbook, and this one did a good job. So yeah, I've got that. I've got that coming up, and Sean, I'm looking forward to that. I think it should be good. Hopefully Barman's writing will hold up and carry us through. I mean, there's different demands for nonfiction, but it was readable. It wasn't dry. It wasn't overly academic, which, boy, for a history book, that's saying a lot. I am continuing to read Jonathan Swift. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, before I get into Jonathan Swift, let's go, which it was published in 1726. Let's go to 1762 and 1764, sorry, and The Club, which is The Club, Johnson, Boswell, and the Friends Who Shaped an Age. And The Club was a conversation club, a kind of a club of gentlemen, definitely all gentlemen, literature, founded by Joshua Reynolds and Samuel Johnson, the creator of like one of the first major dictionaries in English, and great essayist, and kind of he had his edition of the collected works of Shakespeare with his commentary in there, the lives of poets, another one of his great works. And they founded this club. And this is one of these great kind of group, it was a great group biography, mostly focused on the big stars, which are Samuel Johnson and his biographer, friend, sycophant, James Boswell. But around those two, it did the great thing of having kind of little chapters on all of these different friends. David Garrick, the great actor and producer, director of plays, and probably one of the great reasons why Shakespeare was a part of why Shakespeare was elevated to the status of the great English, like representational great English literature. Oliver Goldsmith, Edward Gibbon, the historian, who they call who Johnson and Boswell both hated and called the infidel, because he was very Christian skeptic, let's say, especially in his work, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which was, luckily, he got accepted into the club before this book was published, or else they would have probably blackballed him. And that's kind of the cool dynamic, is like each one of these figures, Edmund Burke, Adam Smith, the economist, The Wealth of Nations, we get to hear about these guys. We get to hear about Johnson and Boswell's reaction to these guys. And it really does give you a great picture of this era in a kind of a real fulsome way, kind of a really good education. And I can see you kind of going from this book and wanting to branch off and read separate biographies of Garrick, of Gibbon, of Adam Smith. And maybe this book would spoil me, because you get the sense that Leo Damarosk, who is the author, I should say that at the front, has kind of picked the cool stories from it. So yeah, just a really, really interesting kind of group era biography, but yeah, very much with Samuel Johnson and James Boswell at its center. Maybe a little bit too much on the psychoanalyzing when it comes to especially Boswell, who does not come off great in this book. He is obviously his biography of Johnson, The Life of Johnson, is kind of considered the great kind of founding thing of the modern biography, and I've read that, and it's really great, except for maybe some of the freaking letters in there that I just skimmed through because they're just so dry. But his capturing of Johnson's conversation in this club and stuff like that is just like, it brings Johnson to life, and it's probably held Johnson up to a far brighter light than he would have ever if this hadn't been a thing and he had only been able to depend on the works. He would be known, but he would be not known the way he is. But I really did not. I did not come out of this book particularly liking James Boswell, or at least not really having that much respect for him outside of his biographical abilities. So yeah, I finished that, and then 40 years earlier, the Gulliver's Travels was published, and I'm still reading this out loud to myself, and still really enjoying it. God, wow. You know, I think sometimes we think, wow, the world is crap and the people in it are terrible and this is just the worst era. It's like, go back to Jonathan Swift. He thought people were fucking horrible, corrupt, venal, cruel, bastards, back then. And, Gulliver goes to this, island, Glubrub, where it's like he gets to, it's the oh God, Lugnag, oh God, Lugnag, where it's like, well, the king here is really lenient because you have to lick your way up to the thing, licking up the dust. But you know, he, you know, the thing is, he doesn't hang people. They just sprinkle down this poisonous stuff and people lick it up. And, this one page maliciously forgot to wash it up. So it killed somebody else who came by next to lick his way up to the throne. And the king, like, you know, he could have had him flogged, but no, the king pardoned him and said, like, you know, you're not to do that unless otherwise instructed. It's like, oh, this guy's a real bastard. But then Gulliver says, like, gee, this guy is really lenient. If only the rulers of Europe could actually learn from this guy about how lenient you are. And you kind of get to get the idea of exactly how terrible Swift thought the rulers of his time were. I mean, he was somebody who was very much out of power, so felt free in a work that was first published anonymously to really, really, really rip into people. So I'm enjoying that because sometimes I'm just a bitter bastard, and I need an even more comprehensively bitter bastard to reinforce that for me. Yeah, and then in audiobooks, I have been swayed by Steve Donahue, and I'm reading Actress by Anne Enright, a 2020 novel that has just fairly recently been done. I'm listening to this, where it's narrated by the actress's daughter, Nora, and it's all about Catherine O'Dell and her kind of, we're going, it's very much the mother-daughter relationship of the daughter having lived in the shadow of her mother's fame as a great actress of the stage and of, I think, and of the screen and stuff like that. But she's also her mother fell, and Nora became more of her keeper. And we learned fairly recently on that her kind of final downfall was shooting a kind of a producer who she'd known kind of throughout her career in the foot, and didn't kill him, but he basically, it's said he basically kind of lingered on in great pain and suffering, and failing health through it, until he did finally die, probably as a result of it. But it's just, it's read by Anne Enright herself, who, you know, this great English accent, just kind of taking you through the layers of this great actress's life, as seen through her daughter, who has been in her shadow, and knows all the secrets and has her own secrets as well. And I just, really enjoying that so far. So I can never be short. I can never be short. That's what I've been reading. And of course, I've also been reading, I read Othello. We're in the midst of Sptmbr, and I've been reading the plays. I haven't particularly been participating. I did watch, over at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Jason have a chat with Lukash at A Cruel Reader's Thesis and Rainy at Rainy Days Reads, as they talked about Othello, which actually really put me in mind of the Moorishness of Othello. And that's not necessarily his race, but more about his religion. And through my reading of Don Quixote, and kind of this fraught relationship of Europe with the Moors, with the Ottoman Turks coming in, invading, the existential threat that Europe felt about that. you know, the fall of Constantinople, the Battle of Lepanto, which Cervantes actually participated in and was wounded in. So that idea of Othello as this outsider, religious outsider, I mean, I think his race obviously does involve in there as well, but that idea of him as Othello, who is a Christian in the play, he is converted as he was captured by the Venetians and then became a great general in the Venetian thing. But like, is that a part of his is that baptism a part of his weakness, of his vulnerability to Iago, giving him little prods about, oh, you know, look, Desdemona's talking to that guy. Oh, that can't be good. It's like, and Othello immediately kind of feeding into that and projecting all this stuff. Othello really only has to say one or two things, and Othello just fills in all the blanks himself. He's got all this insecurity underneath him. And a part of that is being of a despised race, of saying, you know, I'm ugly, I've got coarse speech, but there also being something in there of being not being a Christian from birth, and maybe not having taken all the way. And I mean, they're very much in European society being a strong suspicion against people who've converted, that they've only converted, you know, for show. I mean, in Don Quixote, those people who have actually converted to Christianity are being driven out of Spain because they don't look like Spaniards, and of course we don't trust that they've converted to Christianity, so we're driving them out. So there's that. I was interested in that reading of it this time, probably because of I really like it when you read one book and then it talks to this other book that you're reading. It's like, oh, that's really good. That's really good. And yeah, Don Quixote is like 1615, and Othello is like 1601 to 1608 or something like that. So they're contemporary books, and so that's where maybe I get a little bit more of a heads up of when someone says someone is the, you know, Othello, the Moor of Venice. The Moor isn't just the black man of Venice; that is the Muslim of Venice as well in there. So yeah, that's cool. And this week I am trying to catch up and read The Tempest, but I read Shakespeare very slowly. So over on Rainy Day Reads, Rainy Day Reads channel, they have had a discussion of The Tempest, which I will get to once I've finished reading the thing, and I'll probably be continually behind, but I get to read Shakespeare in Sptmbr, which I really enjoy, and I really thank the hosts for giving me that little prod each year to do that, because I always find it rewarding. And hey, something changed from one year to the next. I read different things, I have different concerns, different anxieties. What could anyone be anxious about nowadays? But yeah, so I'm here. I've got, oh, if you're wondering about the thumbnail, I'm probably going to use, that's Theo, who's got his little blow-up Elizabethan collar on to prevent him from ripping out stitches, because he's had the operation that makes sure that there's not going to be other little Theo Juniors running around the neighborhood that we have to, you know, pay child support for, you know, because Theo doesn't have any money, so we want to avoid that. So yeah, he's just sacked out. He looked like a beach whale in the pictures, but no, he's a good little dog. I put him in a place command here, and he falls asleep, it's like he's such a good little puppy. I really am enjoying him. And he's enjoying us for the most part. Actually, he had his operation, and then the next day he was just careening around all over the place, having fun as usual. Yeah, no stopping this little fella. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later, whether they're good or not.